Hi guys, so obviously I'm here with John Hamlet. I love meeting John. John, always nice to meet you, but unfortunately today we're meeting on a bit of unfortunate terms. And in a nutshell, and I was never a clever person in general, and I'm probably still not too much of a clever person. In a nutshell, explain to me what has happened.
Well, in reality, there's been a bunch of rule changes and sub-rule changes, and coming from ASA, and ASA effectively is now, so to speak, hidden behind the IAAF rules in the sense of trying to enforce it at all these different events, saying that there's a specific type of branding, which implies that you need two different club colors, basically. You'd have club colors with only the two little spots of branding, or you'd have the regular club colors with the two spots plus the bottom showing your club name or whatever that might be it a sponsor or club name. And this is a big bone of contention, not purely because it's going to impact on the elite athletes more than anybody else, which is a question. If you were to cross a line at Omdidam and have your branding across your chest, they said you would be disqualified even if you won the race. And if you were an elite, yet if you were a, let's call it a social athlete, you would be able to put the branding, your club name across your chest, and you'd win. Then that'll be a-okay. So there's double standards going on here. Also, as far as the IAAF branding principle is, there's no room for the ASA branding on top of a number on top of a number, or bib on top of a bib, as they always say. And that in turn says marketing and branding above there, which kind of has to ask the question, why? Why are we doing these things?
Yeah, 100%, because ASA don't theoretically need branding. I mean, it's Athletics South Africa, but more importantly, what does that mean for our pro and elite athletes? Because I think that's a huge question. These guys are guys that need to eat.
Well, in reality, if you ask ASA, they're going to hide behind the IAAF rule and say, you know, IAAF has these two patches, and yet that's ironical because we go to many races worldwide and have a look around and suddenly we find that's not the case. In fact, there is people that don't have clubs, so obviously they don't have a club at the bottom of the chest. This is like the Kenyans, they don't generally have clubs, but you have many others that do have clubs or have sponsors that cross their chest. You can just go and have a look at all the races and you'll see tons of people doing different things. The problem comes, I think, when people are trying to implement a rule to the T, and yet all the IAAF races in the world are not really doing that. They're not even concerned about it. Yet we've got these kind of autocratic, dictative type attitudes there, which like enforcing this at all costs, even at the cost of the athlete. This implies that an so-called want to be, let's call it an elite athlete for the purpose of this, would end up having no income because he wouldn't have exposure, real exposure, and of course that exposure pays for his bills. You know, it might only be 2,000 Rand a month or 3,000 Rand a month, but he's living on that and trying to become a great athlete. He's not getting any support from ASA for sure. He's not getting any support from anybody else, and this is where he gets his money from to be able to pay the bills and do what he's passionate about and become a great man. Difficult if you take it away from him. It's funny they're taking it away from the elites by removing this branding. You're taking it away from the elites and arguing that this little bit of branding up here is okay. Yet ASA is demanding more branding on the chest and effectively turning this poor athlete into a glorified billboard for ASA, the province, and any other type of nonsense. And the event, of course, too. So the event has their exposure, ASA's got their exposure, province got their exposure, and then the poor athlete must sit with these two little blashes on top there that might not even pay 10 cents for him, for argument's sake. I think there's double standards here.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it has looked like I've just literally come back from New York in November, and I didn't have a problem there running with my kits and sponsors and that type of thing. So, John, obviously there's a lot of rules that are being put into place at the moment now. Where to from here?
Well, in reality, you know what, ASA is should be in a supportive capacity, and they really seem to be dictative. We've tried to speak to them, all the elite teams. We've had one or two meetings. I had one meeting with Richard Stander, then we had all a group of us together, had meetings, and really nothing's come of that. It was a waste of time. We've also put in our proposals and concerns about all these rule changes prior to them occurring, and basically we were just probably used as a rubber stamp because that was no effect whatsoever. When we said this is the impact of you doing these type of things, it was done anyway. So obviously I have to again ask the question, where to from here? As you said, I believe that has to be re-evaluated. I believe that we have to be very careful. Having double standards where we're affecting the elite athletes and yet not the social athletes kind of doesn't quite make sense to me. You know, if you're dictating this is a branding for an IAAF standard and this is branding for a race that has to be applicable, it has to be done across the board. Otherwise, you're going to have double standards. Who wins the race? If there are no pros, there's a social guy win it with a branding across his chest. That's okay. He doesn't need the branding. Yet the elite guy that needs the branding, if he crosses the line, becomes disqualified. It just doesn't quite gel right here.
My second or my second point rather, and my last question, because I'm getting a little bit, let's say, red in the face. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Was it ever broken, and do we need to fix it?
No, it wasn't. It was working like a charm. You know, unfortunately, South Africa was kind of the leaders in this in the world, and we really had a good system that's probably been working for a good 20 years, where athletes were able to be paid. There was a method of getting these guys to become great and actually supporting them as best we can. Of course, there's always misuse somewhere in anything. I think ASA can talk about their finances, and you'll find that as well. But in general speaking, that was a good system to work the development from the front end of the business. And the word development is sometimes a swear word. I think we all understand it has become kind of like a skimming system most of the time. So yes, we know that this worked, and when it works, why are we trying to fix something that worked anyway? We know that it was a process. We had pro teams. These pro teams were working properly. They were looking after athletes. There were some athletes that complained, but you'll get that in any environment. But in reality, basically it worked far better than it's working now. We didn't have people being manhandled at the start of a race, pushed around and so on. And that bids another question, you know. If you keep manhandling people, something ugly is going to happen just now. And then when that happens, the poor person that got involved in that's going to be blamed. But I think then the blame lies squarely at these officials and these hard-handed officials, and it lies squarely at ASA's desk, because they created this environment that has become chaotic in so many other races now. It's become a circus.
I can honestly say that this is the tip of the iceberg, and that General has spoken. That's it from me, Brendan. Channel Run.